Cześć, mam na imię Kasia i witam Cię w moim podcaście o hormonach. Jeśli Twoje hormony i cykl miesiączkowy kojarzą Ci się z czymś złym i czujesz się przytłoczona ogromem informacji na temat tego, co zrobić, by wreszcie osiągnąć równowagę hormonalną, jesteś we właściwym miejscu. Każdego dnia pomagam tysiącom kobiet zrozumieć swoje hormony i działać w zgodzie z nimi. Na spokojnie, bez presji, krok po kroku. Także gdziekolwiek teraz jesteś i cokolwiek robisz, weź bardzo głęboki oddech i na czas słuchania tego podcastu postaw siebie i swoje potrzeby na pierwszym miejscu. Cześć, witam Cię w kolejnym odcinku podcastu i myślę, że na wielu płaszczyznach on będzie szczególny. Po pierwsze dlatego, że to będzie odcinek po angielsku, a po drugie dlatego, że będziemy rozmawiać o kobiecej energii w kontekście czasu, w kontekście organizacji zadań. Będziemy rozmawiać też o cyklu miesiączkowym w kontekście organizacji zadań. A właśnie, rozmawiać, czyli nie tylko ja będę mówić, bo do tego odcinka zaprosiłam Beccę Rich, która jest moją coachką, moją time coachką. A zresztą zaraz sama się dowiesz, kim ona jest, co robi, w jaki sposób pracuje i jak działa ze swoimi klientami. To jest po prostu przepiękna rozmowa nam wyszła, 2-godzinna ponad, także też spokojnie możesz sobie podzielić to słuchanie na 2 części, na 2 posiedzenia, na 2 długie spacery, albo nawet na 4 małe. I mam nadzieję, że wyciągniesz z niej tyle wartości, co ja z niej wyciągnęłam, rozmawiając z Beccą, która jest naprawdę cudowną osobą i jestem ogromnie wdzięczna za to, że trafiłam na nią. Także nie zabieram Ci już więcej czasu i życzę miłego słuchania. Hi Becca!
Hi, I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here, and it's also a very new experience to me to have first of all, you are my second guest in my podcast and the first one that I talk in English to, and it's all very new to me.
Yeah.
But I'm excited.
I'm excited too. And of course, if anyone is listening and you don't speak English as your native language, I welcome you just as you are, and we're here to be in community, whether we speak English, Polish, or something else. And I'm a traveler, Polish ancestry in my background, and so it's really cool that I get to do this.
Yeah. And you don't live in the US right now, right?
Nope. Right now I'm in Portugal. My husband and I are digital nomads. I don't really necessarily like that term, but we work from our laptops in different countries. And right now, we're in Portugal. So if you hear dogs barking or like goats or horns or something in the background, that's why.
Okay, no problem at all. It will give, like a natural element to our podcast.
Yeah.
And could you share a little bit about yourself and your work? Because for me, it's so fascinating, and you're like the first person I met that is doing this kind of job.
Yeah, it's definitely something new and innovative, combining all the things that I have. So my background, I actually like taking it back even before my professional career background. I grew up with entrepreneur dad, grandpa, and both of them worked all of the time, like the typical masculine, go, never stop, never relax, never slow down. And so I very much had my worth attached to my success, achievement, to-do list, productivity. And when I was 18, I went to college to study to become an engineer. In my first semester at university, I burned out. I was in the hospital. I had a really intense intestine infection, and that changed the trajectory of my entire life. I still continued to study to become an engineer. I became an engineer, worked in the field for 3.5, 4 years, and then quit, and now I'm doing what I'm doing. But throughout that whole period was really me healing my own stuff around time and around productivity and around what success looks like and joy and all the things that we're going to be talking about today through so many different tools: yoga, meditation, mindfulness, astrology, human design, all the things. And I slowly started to develop like what holistic time management is. And now it's a thing that I get to help people manage their time, looking at them as a whole human being. Yeah, so going back a little bit, if you need to like edit and stuff. So over the years of like healing my own stuff around time and productivity and work and rest, I started to develop what is now holistic time management. And so it's sort of like this beautiful combination between organizational, like engineering, manager, typical, like what we think of as masculine energy, with the yoga and the intuition and spirituality and all of those other healing modalities that I studied and I practiced. And so now it's really sort of this combination of the two that come together to create this really what I think of as beautiful balance between what we typically think of as masculine and feminine energy, and approach time management from a whole human being perspective. And it's a really great way to achieve your goals while enjoying your life, while being present and while resting and taking care of yourself at the greatest, highest level possible.
Okay, so it seems to me like there's quite a journey behind you, and you've been through a lot of difficult things, a lot of difficult events, right? Before getting where you are now.
Yeah, I think we all do, right? We all go through a journey. We all have sort of rock bottom moments, have hard moments, and those are, when you're going through them, really stinks. But when you get past them and start to actually, use them to help others that are also going through it, it feels like you went through it for a purpose, Yeah,
and I can feel it in my life right now when I look behind and when I look back and see all the things I've been through. I have kind of sense why they happened, and I see them as kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
So what exactly do you do right now for work? Like how your work looks like?
Yeah.
And what kind of people you work with?
Yeah, so I typically work with business owners, entrepreneurs, as well as I work with some professionals that do have a 9-to-5 that do work for someone else. But I traditionally, typically love working with people who have full, complete control of their schedule and really looking to take back control and feel in control of their time and schedule. And we work together, and I have 3 different ways that people can work with me. It's either one-on-one coaching, a VIP day where we do just deep dive into your schedule, creating a sustainable schedule that really feels good. And then I also certify coaches and service providers, therapists, and healing people in holistic time management, so then they can bring it forward to their own clients and their own people so they can create better results and transformations for them as well. So I have a few different ways that I like to work with folks, but my passion is through one-on-one coaching. They're all passions for me, but one-on-one coaching is really amazing to hold space and hold a container for folks to really heal, to go deep, and not just, when we think of time management, we think of these surface level productivity hacks and, tips and strategies that are all kind of the same and all kind of don't really work for you. But in the one-on-one coaching container, it's really amazing to see what's possible for people when they tune into themselves and create their own unique solutions. They just skyrocket, and it's really beautiful to witness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I have experienced it with you while working one-on-one, and I am still experiencing that, and probably will be for the next at least couple months, right?
Yeah, woohoo! It's so awesome to witness and hold space for you, and your transformation has been amazing.
I mean, I've never could have imagined that someone could make this beautiful space for me to thrive, like really, it's just, as you say, it's coaching one-on-one, and working with you one-on-one isn't just about, I mean, it's mostly about me and about what I have inside and what are my insights and my deep desires, and not about you telling me do this or do that, or this is a great tool to use and you should try that, right?
Yeah. So good.
Mm-hmm. It's so beautiful to me. I didn't even know something like that existed before, and that's why I started to learn as a holistic coach in the future, of course, and started this course because I'd love to know how to create this beautiful space for people to, because I think most people have the answers inside for most problems, right? And the main problem I see in a lot of cases is just focusing too much on the external world and on the external also expectations and guidelines that are not ours, and that we don't confront with ourselves, our true selves, and don't ask ourselves, what do I think about it?
Yeah, it's so true. And I love the beautiful nature of coaching. Like, so if anyone is wondering what the difference is maybe between a coach or a therapist or someone who just gives advice, a mentor or a consultant, the difference is, essentially therapy is going deep into your past and feeling feelings and doing trauma work and healing like deep wounds. And consulting or mentoring or giving advice is often like that person sharing their own experience and their own opinions and thoughts on things. And then coaching to me is sort of a little bit of both, but in a whole different way. Whereas coaching is, going forward in time and space. So like instead of going back like a therapist, you go forward, you focus on what you want more of instead of the things you don't want to experience, and like you have to like go deep. And then coaching focuses on empowering the person that you're coaching to come up with their own unique solutions. And so that's how it's a little bit different than consulting and mentoring. And obviously the coach and the coachee, like if the coachee is like, I want your own experience, like to help me kind of like figure out my own stuff, that's when a coach should share necessarily like their own experience. But for the most part, it's really just like sitting back and just holding space and asking the right questions to help the person go inwards and find their own unique solutions.
Yeah, and another difference between coaching and therapy for me, and a really important one, is that coach doesn't need to understand the person, and it's not helpful if they try to. But the therapist, I see them as they look at the person and analyze the behavior by some standards of the kind of therapy they studied before, like cognitive behavioral therapy or some other one. And yeah, so it's like a completely different experience, and it's so beautiful and shocking to me when I started coaching, like practicing coaching during the course I'm in right now. I'm shocked every time I practice it, what comes up to the person, that, like solutions I would never imagine they would need, and they do need them, and they don't come from themselves, which is even better. And it also takes a lot of responsibility of the coach, right? Yeah. And because it's focused on the other person, and it feels quite light to me comparing to counseling.
Yeah, it's literal magic when you just ask questions and people just come up with things that you would never think of. Like that's like one of my favorite parts about coaching. It's just like, what? It's wild.
Yeah. Magic, pure magic. Okay, so jumping into our first question, it's kind of related to work, is do you help people with ADHD too? And do you have a lot of clients with ADHD? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I love that you transition into this with what you just mentioned. So as a coach, I've been trained in holding space and asking questions and meeting the person where they are, especially being a holistic coach and taking into account their mind, body, and spirit, or their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self. It is really not necessary to completely understand what the other person is going through or been through to have empathy, especially for someone like myself who is extremely empathetic and caring and compassionate and just like loves people and wants to create a safe space for them. And so, yes, I do have clients with ADHD. I've worked with a lot of people that have it or have something similar, but it's not my specialty because of that empathy and the focus that I put on uniqueness and holistic within my expertise. But I will say it is a lot easier for people with ADHD to get results with me than any other time management person, unless I can't say this for ADHD specific people, but the people with ADHD that I've worked with have so much permission to just be themselves. And when we create the unique solutions that they need in order to spend their time how they want to, it is really, really amazing to see them come up with their own unique solutions that takes into account who they are and who their brain is and how it works. And yeah, that's generally like my thought process on that.
Okay, that's so beautiful, and I feel like, as you said, people with ADHD, like just by creating the space, the safe space, which you're so amazing at creating this safe space, and I'm gonna say it over and over again because I'm really impressed, amazed by that, and I love this element of our work together. So in the space, you're not judging anyone, and you let them be as they are, and it's beautiful, and I think it's very helpful, and it can be helpful, especially for some people with ADHD, as the external world is often sending the message that they should manage all of the expectations and they should behave in a one correct way that they just can't. And it's not possible for them, maybe, probably. I don't know. Like I don't specialize in ADHD too, but I'm just guessing that it may be tougher for them to.
Yeah. So much like openness and love and compassion. And when you meet yourself with that same amount of understanding and love and empathy, that's when real solutions are created. That's when you can really finally feel like yourself. And when you feel like yourself, then it's possible to do anything you want to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what came to me now is also that it's all about trusting yourself, right? And trusting that the right solutions will come and they are possible for you.
Yep.
While being yourself at the same time. And it was a really tough part for me. And I even remembered this morning saying to you a couple months ago, maybe, something about trusting myself, that it's really scary. And that is like, how can I trust myself when I'm not sure what will happen, if I am going to feel like doing my work, and if I am going to, like, I don't know, maybe I'm gonna sit all day and do nothing, and what then? What about trusting? How does trusting myself relates to that, or relates to the real world and the duties that I have to do?
Yeah, I think, and this is like a whole nother rabbit hole, but we've been, especially when it comes to how we spend our time and what we do with our lives, especially when it comes to work, we've been taught so much about what it looks like to be like this good, productive member of society, right? And there's a lot of healing and a lot of ingrained stuff that we don't realize necessarily that we're operating from. And so when people come to me and work together, it's like I have seen it so much over the last 2.5 years that when I like stand strong and trust myself as the coach in the results that I am supporting my clients in creating, then they do as well. And then they start to grow their own self-trust, and then they feel good about how they spend their time. And then they start to like notice how much they have been operating in this sort of like binary black or white, like sort of good member of society productivity stuff that's ingrained in all of us.
It is, and it's all most people know, right? Because it's in the mainstream, and I mean I know for sure that it's the only way of working, living that I knew before I met you and before we started working together. And it really relates to the questions how to switch from doing in a masculine energy to trusting in a feminine at work. But before diving into this question, maybe let's start from what's the difference in time management between masculine and feminine energy.
Yeah, so I'm even curious, like, do you think that we should even go backwards even more to like what is the difference between feminine and masculine energy?
Yeah, of course.
And then we can like apply it to time management. So traditionally in our world, we think of masculine, feminine, men, woman, this sort of binary duality. And as a rebel, as someone who, as rebels here, I want to offer up something even different, something potentially challenging. And so traditionally, feminine is like that passive, compassionate, nurturing, intuitive, creative sort of qualities. And the masculine is more active, dominating, initiating, logical, hard kind of like energy. And actually preparing for this interview, I realized that, like I shared in my own personal story, like I grew up in this sort of masculine way, and then I learned this more like feminine way, and now I approach everything sort of as this like balance between the two. And so when you think about the two different energies, those are the extremes, right? Like we don't want to aim for either feminine or either masculine. Neither are good or bad, but in my opinion, I think that it's really important to aim for the middle, right? And aim for like this sort of non-binary, like dualistic kind of being, because it's super limiting. It's limiting in the sense of like, I'm feminine or I'm masculine. Like one is good, one is bad. I need to be more of one versus the other. And when we look in nature and doing research for this, it was so wild. Like so many animals and plants portray behavior that doesn't fit their gender or their sex. And so when you limit, like, I have to be this way or this way is good or bad, it's often, it's a box that we put ourselves in. And so I want to, as we have this conversation about all these different questions about feminine and masculine, I want, if you're listening, to just notice where you think is good, where you think is bad, and maybe finding a place in the middle that isn't one or the other. And how can you create a whole being of betweenness and non-dualisticness when it comes to time management, right?
Yeah, I agree. And also what came to me was that the middle may not be still and may look like there's one day when you are more in masculine energy and the other day you are more in the feminine. And to me, this is also the middle and the balance.
Yes. Yeah, totally. So one of the things that I visually see, I'm a visual person. And so if you think of like a pendulum or like, the string with the ball at the end and it swings, like think of like masculine and feminine as like the ends, and it just moves in between them all, like, you know, there's a pendulum that just goes forever, and you, depending on the day and like the snapshot of where you are, you could be anywhere in between the two extremes, right?
Yeah. And also I think it's important for us to feel good. Like, it's the most important thing. And what you said, that everyone should, I mean, we don't want any shoulds or musts in this podcast, but it may be helpful to just notice where we are and which, like, are we in the place that serves us, and are we using the masculine, feminine energy in a way that serves us and that feels good?
Yeah.
And also, I'm thinking that because I emphasize a lot a feminine energy, because I work with hormonal imbalances and menstrual cycles and stuff. And I think one of the reasons why I emphasize it so much is, first, because I was in this masculine energy for a really long time, and I thought that this is the road to success, which is not, obviously. And this is the road to burnout for me. This was. But also, what I observe is that women in today's world are kind of try to disconnect, like on purpose, disconnect from their feminine side, because it is seen as weaker and as this less important and less valuable, and like woo stuff, and intuition, emotions are seen like less than masculine energy, and or all of these logical things, and are very often laughed at. And that's why I think a lot of women are disconnected from their feminine side. What do you think about that?
I mean, I know we hold the similar values when it comes to a lot of these things. So 100%. I think it's like our world has been created essentially by men, right? They had a 2,000-year head start in terms of like our power, and there's like women's rights are still being attacked on to this day, right?
Yeah.
And so, and when we think about finding balance, it makes sense that if there's these two extremes and we're way too far on one extreme, we need the other to, you know, balance us out and bring us back to middle. And we've touched on this a couple times, and so I want to bring it like hard into focus, is finding out where you are on sort of like this spectrum and tuning in to figure out what you need more of. Like, all comes back to connecting with yourself and listening to yourself, and that is a feminine thing to do. And so there's sort of like this like circle or cycle, this like potential like snake eating its own tail, because it's like, how do you get to somewhere by needing to be there already to get there? And so it's definitely challenging when we're busy, we're always focused on doing, we're like go. It's extremely, and we're exhausted, our brain isn't functioning at its best. Like, of course it makes sense that it's so difficult to slow down and to not feel guilty when you take time off or rest, or it's really hard to listen and to be more intuitive and to value your intuition and all the things that it comes sort of with this quote unquote, like what we think of as feminine energy.
And do you think it's even possible to nurture your feminine side when someone's always in a hurry? Because there's this question literally about it. Do you think it's possible?
I loved that. I want to ask the person that asked this question, like, do you think it's possible? That's my coaching brain, right? Like, do you think that like if you ask this, whoever asked this question or whoever's listening, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's a great question, like, ask yourself that. Is it possible for you to hurry and to go, and also be in this feminine way of like more intuitive, more present and nurturing and compassionate? Like, is it possible? Do you think it is? And do you want to be in a hurry? Like, that's the second question, is like, do you want to be go, 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 do, do, do? And if not, then that is like a whole nother journey of learning how to slow down and to heal some of that time anxiety or pressure or rushing mentality that we're so ingrained with.
Yeah, and great questions. And then if someone says they are not into, like, they don't want to be in a hurry and they think it is possible, what is the next question that it could help them come up with the solution?
Yeah, I mean, I would ask, quite frankly, like, so what do you want your day-to-day to look like and feel like? What do you, maybe not as like what is good, but what is good for you, for your body, and what's important to you and your core values and who you are as a whole human being. Like, how do you want to move through this world in your day-to-day? And when you tap into like your own circumstances, your own being, it's so much easier to then be like, oh, this is how I can do it. And yeah, holding space for you to discover your how, your own unique how.
Also, I think letting yourselves answering in the true way, true for you, because I feel, at least for me, it was kind of a problem to answer to myself honestly about what I really want and how I really feel, because it didn't match at all the world I was living in, and it didn't match the standards and the kind of expectations that I think are everywhere around me.
I just wanted to say, it's scary to diverge from the norm, and I want to acknowledge and celebrate your courage and bravery to making that happen, as well as anybody else that's on this journey to living a more joyful, well-balanced, healthy life. It is possible, and it just takes a lot of courage and bravery.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, it does. And also, how do you think all of that relates to the time management tools and the calendars and to-do lists, and how can we find the feminine, flowy, emotional elements in there?
Yeah. So technically, time management was created by a man for a society, for industry with like hyper masculinity, hyper productivity, hyper profits, hyper exploitation, and capitalism, whole nother ball game. But can you hear dogs barking? I'm so sorry that you have to pause.
Yeah, just a little bit, but no,
they've never been this bad
big.
Here.
They are just saying hello.
Gosh, I'm so sorry.
No problem at all.
Yeah, so time management was created by a man. He was an engineer too, by the way, so it's really cool that I'm an engineer and I'm like, let's burn it all down. So yeah, I think that the difference in the way that I think about time management, again, it's not necessarily feminine because it's holistic, it's whole human being. So we do use structure, we do talk about actions and goals and efficiency and all of that stuff, but it's also, coming back to center and coming back to balance. And you can't spend your time how you want to without both, in my opinion, right? We need to-do lists in some way, shape, or form. We do need some way to help us spend our time how we want to, especially when we're business owners or professionals or people who have a lot on their plate and managing a lot.
Business owners and people who are having a lot of a lot on their plates need to-do lists and need some kind of systems.
Yeah. So that's sort of the difference in, feminine versus like masculine time management. Although, like I said, I'm sort of in the middle, right? I'm in the balance of them both. And so it's coming back to that center. And when it comes to calendars, for example, I know that was one question, like how to use more feminine energy, more intuition, more flow when it comes to calendars. Trust. Yeah. And so technically, while calendars were created by quote unquote man, it's technically neutral. Like we can approach our calendars with a neutral mindset or neutral vibe about it. Is that possible for a lot of people? No, because there's like so much shame. There's so much like stuff that's caught up in when we just click on Google Calendar and like see it, or whatever calendar system you use.
This was me 2 months ago even.
Yeah. And so bringing like the tool itself, this can apply to to-do lists, this can apply to any time management tool or any tool in the world. Like it is neutral. As it is technically neutral. And how you bring quote unquote more feminine energy or more trust or more intuition to those tools is quite simply just listening to yourself. And like we've already talked about, it's really hard to do when you're consumed by doing and like busy and exhausted and all of these things.
And shoulds and musts.
Shoulds and musts. And we might not have like the awareness around the shoulds quite yet, like what we think we should do. And so when I see a lot of people like time block or create an ideal week, they'll fill it up like all the way. They'll just like fill up and time block every 30 minutes because that's what we've been traditionally taught to do around our calendars or time blocking. And that, to me, like that doesn't feel like trust, right? That doesn't feel like intuition. That feels to me like you don't trust yourself to spend your time in the best way possible. And so you think you have to block it out all day, every day. And so a great way to practice trusting yourself is putting the bare minimum in your calendar of like what you actually have to do. My calendar, I only have stuff scheduled 3 days out of the 7. I have stuff. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have stuff on other days. I wanted to retract that statement, but it's all for myself. It's all like self-care stuff and meetings, like with my therapist, for example, or like friends or whatever. But in terms of work, I only schedule things for 3 days out of the week. And so that's a really great way to integrate some feminine energy into your calendar, is trusting that you can just put the minimum amount of stuff in there and allow yourself to spend the rest of your time doing what you want.
Yeah, and a lot of things came to me while listening to you. And yeah, so I wanted to start with sharing my experience with calendar, which was, I remember when I opened, I think during our session, my calendar, and I think you asked me how I feel, how does it feel when I look at it? And I said it feels scary. And it was a time when I was completely two different sides. Like 1 week I would plan everything and I would do all of these to-do lists and use all of the systems and stuff. And the other week I wouldn't plan anything and just was hiding from all of that. And it took me a long time and a lot of honest conversations with myself about how I really feel and what really feels comfortable to me in terms of Google Calendar and planning and to-do list. And I'm still exploring and still learning. And then there was a time when what felt comfortable was planning only 3 days ahead and not more. And then came the time when I didn't plan anything at all because I didn't feel like it again. And and this week actually was the first week when I really used Google Calendar in so supportive way, and it felt so great to have it as a tool. And what you said, that we need those systems, and especially when we run our businesses and work and have a lot of things on our plate. And I agree, and I think it's important to emphasize the word need. We need them, not like we need to change ourselves, and we are not for them. They are for us.
It's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that you said, and I know you have your cute little mug that says like, I make my own rules. And that's what I think of when I think of what you just shared. Thank you for sharing all that. And you, like, one of the things that we often think of is that when we create this schedule or this calendar, or this to-do list, like, we have to do it. We have to get through it all. We have to do it all. And at the end of the day, like, the calendar, our schedules usually end up controlling us. And that's one of the first things that I love talking to people about, is starting to, create your own rules and feeling in control of the thing that you are creating.
Yeah. And switching the perspective, I think, from this feeling of musts and shoulds, because they're all coming from the place that we are less important and we should change ourselves in order to complete this to-do list, and in order to go through all of the events on our calendar. And this switch is so beautiful, from this point to the point where they are for us, and we don't have to do anything, and we can use them in whatever way we want.
Yeah. And something that you really mentioned was, how do you feel about it? Like, how do you feel about your to-do list or your calendar or your schedule? And being able to take a step back and asking yourself that and answering really honestly, that's a great way to get the real insight that you need to move forward in a more authentic way.
I agree. Okay, so maybe answer some questions about which are how to make a business plan aligned with my feminine energy while having a job and a family. Can I read two other questions? Or do you see them maybe?
I have them in front of me, but...
Okay, because I feel like they are all connected.
Okay, which ones?
Especially the first one and the third one. Yeah, and the second one.
Like all towards the top, the first photo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start with the first one. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, so I kind of want to start with the one that you just brought up. Like, how do you do your business, your job, your family, like do all the things essentially, and put more feminine energy into it. And I want to say that shifting the perspective, like, you have the best opportunity to put feminine energy into your business plans, because you can create, your job, your structure for the most part for your job, your family. And so you can create that structure so you can get that down and then leave the whole rest of the space open for business. You can leave it open for you to allow and to connect with yourself more and flow when you're starting your business and you're just planning things out and you're, in the first couple of years, like, that is literally the best time, in my opinion, because if you start your business and you get going using all this hustle and grind, it's going to be so much harder to get away from it and restructure your whole business potentially, right? So I think when it comes tangibly to planning your business, when you listen to yourself, when you tune in and you've created the structure for everything else, so you just got to do it. And that's a whole nother, just doing it is complicated, but making your family and your job as simple as possible, as structured and just like a well-oiled machine, then you're planning your business, you have your realistic capacity now that you've, you know, realistically taken into account everything else. And let's say you have 2 hours a day to work on your business after your job, after your family. When you really get down to like your realistic amount of time that you have for your business, you will be so much clearer on how to fill that time because you only have a limited amount of time. And then when you tune into yourself and really, you know, getting business support, mentorship is always like, I love getting business coaches. I love coaching and therapy and all the support possible. But when you get that business support and attach it into the window that you have in your life for business, you're going to go so much further faster instead of wanting to like put business all throughout your job and switching between your job and your business and your family and all the things. Like, try and separate them a little bit and structure out the other stuff and allow time for your business to just be open and allow and flow. And for me personally, like, I'm in a different boat now, I think, when it comes to planning. Like, I don't plan at all. Like, I'm a time management coach and I have no idea where I'm going to live in like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Like, I feel like I've taken it to the next level or next extreme, if you will. I don't know what I'm doing in my business in a month. And that's how much I feel like trust I have in myself, that I am going to listen to what I want to do and need to do. And I'm listening to my clients and my audience and my people. And that, at the end of the day, is the best business plan there is, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's also comes down to all the external, quote unquote, expectations that and things we hear that business owners or future business owners should do or should plan, and all of the strategies. And I mean, you can do it. I did it, but you don't have to. And there are millions of things that you can do, and there's no one right answer to that. And it's really beautiful what you said, creating the space for growing your business, even 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, 2 hours a week, and also seeing what comes up and what happens. And this is, for me, I see it like creating space for your feminine energy to come up, and just trusting that something will come up then, and that you don't need to know what happens then in order to have a good outcome.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that it's like really hard. If you were listening to what I shared, my advice, my opinions on the business plan, and you were like, I can't do that. That might be the should, right? That might be the awareness that you need to be like, oh wait, I am still thinking that my business plan needs to look a certain way, or my business needs to look a certain way, or my calendar needs to look a certain way. And what do you want to do with that information now? Like, do you want to continue to believe that you can't do business or you can't do life in the way that you want to? And if you say, no, I want to be able to do life in the way that I want to, then being in that solution-oriented place instead of but I can't do it the way that I want, right? The two different kind of perspectives here.
Yeah. It's, I think what is important here is to be in tune with yourself and be in the present moment and just observe all of the things that come to you.
Yeah, no doubt.
And are they really yours?
And it's so hard.
Or somebody else's?
I just want to for anyone listening, like, it is so challenging. It's one of the hardest things that we can ever do, and that's literally why I do what I do.
Yeah. That's why you have your job, right? And the clients.
I've been working on this basically my whole life. Like, this is like, to me, like just everything that I've prepared for.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think that this is like a never-ending journey and story. And at the beginning, for me, the beginning was the hardest, and it gets easier and it gets much more enjoyable. But the beginnings, I think, might be hard for most people.
It's just like a muscle, right? It's a muscle like going to the gym and continuing to work out, which I'm doing really bad at right now.
Yeah, but it gets stronger and easier.
It does.
Okay, so do you think there's any way that we can, if somebody's in a full-time job, and do you think are there some ways they can convince and apply this feminine energy, convince people around them that feminine energy and intuition is also a valuable tool?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. The convincing is like an energy glitch to me. Like the word convincing, I'm like, oh. When you think of like feminine energy, trust, flow, allow, like I don't attach that to convincing. And so I'm curious about that word, like what that is about. Obviously, I know workplaces are often toxic and often like really frustrating for a lot of people who are, trying to live and be more intuitive or more flowy or more, anything related to feminine energy. And so I think the best way is to show them, like literally just communicate when you've used your intuition at work in the past and the benefits and the RO, like the return sort of on investment, if you will, very masculine word, on how you've used your intuition at work. And it sounds like you have to discover that for yourself. Whoever asked this question, it sounds like you might need to do a little bit of deeper diving into how your intuition is valuable in your life to you, and convincing yourself of that, and then just being able to go into your workplace and just use it. And if people are, obviously I don't know what this person does, or, there's a whole bunch of external circumstances that could potentially go into this, but using it, just use it.
And maybe I think we can't really expect the people that we work with to answer in a way that we want them to answer, and that's something that's not up to us.
One of my favorite things is in 12-step communities. If anyone has ever heard of 12-step communities, the Serenity Prayer. And the Serenity Prayer, essentially, I'm not a religious person, I'm a spiritual person. And I love the Serenity Prayer because grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to know that one is me.
Yeah. So it seems like it fits in this situation. And also it kind of connects to the question about setting boundary. I mean, I wasn't sure how to translate it because it was literally how to set boundaries with people so they will do what we want, not what they want. And I'm not sure if for me, setting boundaries is not about other people, and it's not about them doing what we want, because we don't have the power to force someone. And if we do that, it's kind of a violence, right? And so setting boundaries for me is about ourselves and about our decisions, and just being us being for us, and creating boundaries, and staying in our safe space.
Yeah, you mentioned an important word is safety, right? When it comes to boundaries, it's so different for everybody. There's like complex, there's trauma, like there could be some therapy that might be needed for someone struggling with boundaries. And there's so many different like ways that boundaries manifest in our life. And so when we connect what we want, I didn't even, this question, like I was kind of like, okay, I don't know. But connecting to like the ripple effect of what you want to do. So I love that you brought this question up when I brought up the serenity prayer, because it's like you set boundaries for what you want and what, like how you want to spend your time, what you want to do with your life. And if someone struggles with the boundaries that you're setting for yourself, then oftentimes we need to help the other person see the benefit. And so another client of mine that comes to mind for this question is her partner wanted her to do work for her, to do his work for her. And she was like dreading it. And of course I was like, how can we not do this? Like, you clearly don't want to do it. So how can we not do it? And essentially, like, she had to come to terms with, I don't want to do this thing. And then realizing the benefit of not doing her partner's work for him. And which, where I could spend more time with our kid and you, and, I could make more money doing my own stuff and all these different benefits. Like, it would be better for our relationship. And once he realized all of that, he was like, oh yeah, totally. I'm just going to outsource it to someone else. And it's like, oh my gosh,
It gets so
right?
simple.
It's so simple when we allow ourselves to think of other ways of doing it, which we often think we don't have other ways to do something, which we both know that there's a million different ways to do something. We just have to remember the ways that we can. And so if you feel safe to communicate with the other person about what you need, that's super important. At the end of the day, though, like, the question that I have is just like, how can you set the boundaries, and how can you practice them over and over and over again?
Okay, so the next question is about joy and about what should I do if the routine homework is starting to take away all the joy in my life. I am working 3 shifts and I feel exhausted, can't even enjoy my free weekends anymore.
Yeah, this question sort of made me think of burnout, actually. If you can't remember like what brings you joy now or in the past, you can't think of anything, you're just like too tired, that to me is like, sounds a lot more like burnout from overexhaustion. And it's a real thing. Like, it is scientifically studied. There's so much research in, you stop feeling like the joy, the highs, the lows, like you, and essentially become numb. And the real answer for me, like when I read this question, I was like, ask for help. If there's nothing in your life that brings you joy, because you're so tired and you're like stuck in your rhythm, your routine, your brain isn't functioning as well because you're so tired, like, yeah, ask for help. That's all I got for this one. I think if you can think about the things that bring you joy, and you can think about them in little increments, like, what is something that would bring you just a small amount of joy right now? Is it closing your eyes, and is it thinking about something, visualizing something? Like, continue to practice those little small moments. You don't have to like take a week-long vacation and go skydiving and like have all these like huge joyful moments, because you probably don't have like the bandwidth for that much joy right now. But if you can think about the things that bring you joy, and you really can, put them more and more into your life, asking your partner or someone in your life, if you have a partner or a friend or a loved one that can support you in making more time for joy. That's what I mean for asking for help. It doesn't necessarily need to be a therapist or a coach, while they would be probably helpful.
Yeah, I think it's a Great advice. Okay, I have nothing to add here. And okay, so jumping into menstrual cycle.
Sure.
No? And yeah, so we got two questions here, and one is how our productivity changes during menstrual cycle.
Yeah. So again, every single person is different. My cycle is very different from yours, probably, in terms of energy, in terms of focus, in terms of joy, in terms of anxiety. But traditionally, your first few days, 1 to 5. So when you're bleeding, that's more of like rest. It's more surrender. It's more slow. It's more listening to yourself. Mine is like 3 days before I start bleeding and like 1 or 2 days into my menstrual cycle. And so that's an example of like how this might shift. And the next, 5 to 13 traditionally is more spring, essentially, like scheduled tasks that require more physical energy, mental energy, making lists, doing the things, going after it, more closer to like, leading up to ovulation. And I definitely have more ovulation around or more energy around my ovulation. And I actually used to have therapy. I have therapy once a month. And my therapist, I was like, hey, so we're meeting around the time that I ovulate and my mood is amazing. And when I come to therapy, I'm like, life is great. I need you more when I'm like in the later part of my cycle, when I'm like, I hate life. So that's a great example of like how you can adjust your, what you do based on your cycle. The third part is sort of like day 13, so like 2 weeks in until day 20. And that is more of like your, in business, we say networking. It's more social. It's more like, going out there. It's more, I don't know how else to describe it aside from like social, but
being outside.
Like going out into the world. Summertime, like playing, like think of summer. And then the last week of the menstrual cycle is more like going back inwards and doing more of the things that you love and creative things and, all of that. And so I often, like I really am connected with my menstrual cycle, but I don't necessarily plan with it. I think I do intuitively, but I'm not like, oh, like I'm going to schedule this podcast around my ovulation period or anything like that. While I could, that's just not my vibe. But I think that if your cycle is really impactful to your mood, to your energy, to your focus, to your concentration, like it can really, really, really change how you feel about your time, how you achieve your goals. Like it's gonna like really impact your productivity, your life, your business if your menstrual cycle is really important for you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I think for me it's somehow as you described about all of those seasons, and there was a time when I tried to take as much as possible from my cycle and connecting that to my productivity and my calendar. And then I realized, like, I asked myself, what do I really need from it? And and also you helped here by asking me some supportive questions around it. And yeah, what I do now is put into my calendar when is the last week of my cycle and when is the first week. And this gives me kind of a sense of when I'm in the last week of my cycle, I put a little less tasks and I take into the account that I may not feel like doing a lot. And also on the first week of my cycle, I mean, not the whole week, but I only put the first day the first day of my period on the calendar, which is mostly when my energy goes down, and I love to be with myself and do some grounding exercises and be in nature. And so it's a time when I am inside a lot, in me, and I get to connect with myself even deeper.
I love how
that's what I want.
Yeah, I love how you made it like your custom solution, right? Like, I don't want to necessarily like be so intense and like, do all the things around it. I just need day 1 and day 28 and like some vibes around there, and just like, be like intuitive about it and like just listening to yourself, right? That's really beautiful that you've done it. You've set it up that way.
Thank you. And I love that too. And also I love that, it's like I created this kind of guidelines for myself, but they are not strict rules. So when I see that I'm in the last week of my cycle and I feel awesome and I feel like I have a lot of energy, which sometimes happens like one day, which is weird, and I think it's maybe from the, I don't know, progesterone rise or something like that. So when I feel like it, I do it all, and I proceed in a way that makes me happy, and that's the best for me in the moment, and not look at my calendar and see, oh my God, it's the last week of my cycle, so I shouldn't do that. Yeah. No, I'm the most important one in this all.
Yes, so good. So good. Yeah, I think it's a way you can use your cycle as a way to like give yourself permission. That's kind of how I use it. It's like, give yourself permission to go slower, to go faster, to just be at your own rhythm, because we can't, like a woman cannot define or deny that their hormones don't impact their focus or mood or any of that stuff. It's going to. We all know that for the most part,
And I think it's beautiful, and but it relates to our next question, which is how to deal with masculine energy and masculine expectations from the world, outside world, when we are in the days of the cycle when we don't feel like it. Because one thing is that we acknowledge that we're not the same every day during our cycle. But the other thing is that people laugh about it, or they don't know about it because we don't tell them, because we are afraid of what they're going to say, or I don't know. Like, what do you think about that?
I loved this question, actually. The first thing that came to mind, like when I think of someone that's really deeply connected to their intuition, their own power, they're confident, like, one, they don't care like what other people think and feel, because they're so in tune with what they want and need and feel. And so I would say, like, that's, essentially what we're all working after is in this world, I believe. And as like a woman, like, moving into like just so in tune with self, so confident in self that I can just move through the world and not necessarily care what the world has to say about it. Obviously not with like, you care what people like. You want to make sure that you're doing good and you're not harming people, of course. But I would say, like, when you're getting started with this journey, or you're like not necessarily sure like how you feel or how to give yourself permission to relax or soften or be more feminine in like certain parts of your cycle, like, use your masculine energy that you have inside of you. Use that action. Use that decisiveness. Use that like logic even to push back and say, like, this is why softening, this is why relaxing in this moment is best for me, you, and everyone around us. Like, use that beautiful masculine energy to soften.
And I think it has a lot to do with boundaries, right?
Of
With
course,
setting
yeah.
boundaries.
You can go back and listen to the boundary question again.
Yeah, exactly. And also what came to mind is we don't have to explain everyone like, oh, hey, sorry, it's my luteal phase and I'm going to do less today. It like we don't have to. If there is a person where you feel safe around, her or him, great. And you want to explain them, great. Just do it. No, it's the worst phrase possible. I mean, you can do it if you feel like it. But if not, like everyone, I feel in full-time jobs, working in full-time jobs, like in the office, in some sort of corporation and stuff, people sometimes come to work, right, and say, "Oh, I have a tough day, and I don't feel like doing everything today." Like maybe not to their boss, right? but not every, like men also are not productive all the time. I mean, they don't have, their cycle is like 24 hours, but still, everyone has their ups and downs.
100%. We're all human, right? We're not robots. And when it comes to time management, productivity, all like work, like all the stuff, we often think we have to be operating at the same amount, same level every single day, all day. And like, I'm telling you, if you're listening, it is not possible. It will never be possible. Unless you find a way to convert yourself into a computer robot, it's not possible.
Yeah. And it also was like one of the most important things for me to do in my journey, in my spiritual journey and journey in general, was to let go of those expectations towards me and towards the fact that I will do it all because I want, and I'm not going to be always productive and always the same. And yeah, it's crazy, even crazy to expect something like that from yourself. And yeah, I had this important thought and I forgot about it. So go on.
Yeah, I just think that, you know, the way that I sort of think about us being human, it's just so beautiful. I think it's a gift that we get to slow down. It's a gift that we get tired. It's a gift that we get to be creative and then take action and then chill and then like all the things like that. All of that is the beauty and the magnificence of being alive. Like,
yeah,
let's be alive. Let's be human.
Yeah, it's the most human thing ever. And I remember the question now, which was actually your favorite question and mine favorite question now, which is, how can you support yourself during the times when you don't feel like it and during the loss in your energy in the menstrual cycle? How can you support yourself at work?
I think that it's I feel like I'm going to say this over and over again, but this is why it's so important. Like, ask yourself what you need. Ask yourself how you're feeling. Ask yourself questions. Get curious about what is happening in your world, in your life, in your work that is impacting you. Ask people. You know, we're taught that we need to be like hyper independent and self-reliant and never ask anybody for anything. We have to do it all ourselves. And like, is that serving us? Not really. Like, I think that it's so important. And that's one of the things I think Europe does a little bit better than the US is that in the US it's even stronger, like this, like really independent, like self-reliance energy. And we've all been ingrained to like not ask for any help from anybody. And I mean, it's everywhere in the world, but I see it just like so much more rampant in the US than when I'm in Europe. And how can you ask for help? How can you support yourself with somebody else, with community, with loved ones?
And, you know, I'm afraid it's coming to Europe and it will be here. So and I don't know when, but I see most of the trends and of the beliefs are coming to Europe with a huge delay, but they do. But it's even more important than to ask yourself these questions now and to be prepared for the changing mainstream and for the fact that it may change in like I don't even know if mainstream is ever good. like probably
Those
not.
little rebellious souls.
But oh yeah. So it is very important to work on these things now. I mean, not work, but explore all of these topics now. So yeah, we finished the menstrual cycle question section, and we can get into some general questions about time management and gentle time management. I also see it as joyful time management, as your webinar you made a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. I can't recall. It's probably been much more than I think.
Yeah. Oh, nothing. I was just laughing because I kind of like change it, and it's like holistic time management, joyful time management, gentle time management, like all the different things.
Yeah, but eventually it was joyful time management, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying like whole as
Was
my
it?
business, but yeah, the webinar was specifically joyful time management.
Joyful time management. Okay. I loved it. Yeah, I loved it. And do you have it on your website now?
Yep. It's on my. You can purchase the replay and get the workbook. And if you're curious, it's more so about like how to use your inner kid or your inner self to help you experience more joy. So I often think that like, well, not me, but it's a common thought that, you know, when you're a child, like thinking about all the things that brought you joy, like playing on the beach or, you know, playing on the playground, playing everywhere, like all the things like that made you forget about time and made you forget about the world and all of that stuff. Like that is essentially one of the ways that we can bring more joy into our lives, is just reconnecting with that inner kid, inner little self.
Reparenting. Yeah, it was also a new word for me. But I love the webinar, and it bring me a whole new insights that I didn't even know that I didn't even know the things I've discovered are in me.
Yeah.
And I love the connection to the childhood, and I love the whole experience, even though I wasn't there live. But I highly recommend you to check that out, because Becca has some great resources on her website, which we are going to talk about probably further in our podcast. But for now, maybe let's leave this first question as the last, okay, from the general. But now maybe dive deep into setting priorities and how to set priorities.
Yeah, of course. So I think one of the things that so many people struggle with is priorities. Essentially getting clear on what you really want to do with your time, with your life, how to figure out what to do when, how to say no to the things that aren't exactly a priority or something that you want to do. And I'm going to come back to it again. Place your hand on your heart. Tune in with yourself. Pause. When we're just going, it's so easy to think that we have to do all the things, and it's incredibly hard to prioritize what we want to do. And if you're struggling, I feel like with this question, I got the vibe that it was sort of like, what do I prioritize because I have, like, everything feels like a priority, right? Everything feels important that I need to do. And like figuring out what are the things that, one, make you forget about time. I think that's such an important question that I love coming back to, is like, what helps you get into that flow state and like really feels really good, and like when you're done the thing, like you have more energy. Like that is something that should potentially be a priority in your life. Other things, of course, are things that have to get done. If you're a parent, if you have a job. There's certain things that do have to get done that are a priority. And I truly believe that everybody knows inside of their heart what they want to do. It's sort of just like remembering or rediscovering or like bringing to the top of your mind, like what you actually want to do, what's a real priority in your life. And another client of mine recently said this quote, and it really impacted me. She said, "You can have it all, you can, but maybe just not today or all at once." And I was like, oof, like that hit me like right in my heart, because it's like, you know, we want it all, we want it right now. And I do think that, you know, when it comes to living a slow, beautiful life and also achieving your goals, I think that's possible. And I think that it's 100% possible because I see it every day. However, it's like if you want to be, if your priorities are to travel and to buy a home, it's kind of like they're conflicting, right? You can't travel the world and buy a home unless you're like stupid rich and you have a ton of money, but like who oh, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think that there is like this deeper thing inside of each of us, deeper wisdom, that we know what our true priorities are, and we have to pause a little bit just to figure them out.
Yeah, and I think it's a process, and it may be a long one, difficult at the beginning. And I also see it kind of like getting rid of all of the things that all of the shoots and all of the things that are not ours, and just leaving what is left is us, and it's the things that bring us joy. But the process of letting go of the rest may be difficult and may be long. And it is a process.
Yeah, I mean, so what I often think of as prioritizing is pruning. So if you think about like, you know, taking scissors, pruning things to your trees or your bushes or your plants, like, and one aspect, like cutting off a potentially dying, maybe not dying, part of your plant, like that could be labeled as bad because you're cutting and killing some part of the plant, right? But bigger picture, zooming out, when you prune the things, when you prune your trees and bushes, like that's when the whole of the plant gets more energy and it can grow faster and it stays alive. If you don't prune your tree or your bush, it's gonna die eventually, right?
And you gotta do it all the time, like not.
Gotta do it regularly.
I think
regularly, whether it's every spring or every couple seasons or you know whatever the specific plant is. But renegotiating your priorities is super important.
And what came to me is also how I think I literally said to you, maybe on our first call in April, I think, late April, as we said yesterday, which is I wanted to learn how to set priorities because for me, everything felt important. And finally, what I am observing, I mean, I'm much better at setting priorities now, but what I am observing is that what I do in the moment is the most important thing. Like it is my priority. Like my behavior determines my priorities. And I may think otherwise. And when I plan my week, I don't really set priorities. I just look at the calendar and see what, like, connect with myself and stuff and see what comes up. But then during the week, I decide kind of in the moment what is my priority. My to-do lists and my schedule are things that I look at. But what feels the most important in the moment is my answer and is a priority to me.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That was so beautiful. And to sort of maybe recap to like instill it within my mind and like potentially outward is like when you prioritize yourself and how you feel and your experience and being present in the moment, in each present moment, and trust in yourself. All of those come together to help you make the best decision possible for what you want to do.
Yeah. So I started talking about, I bring up to-do lists. So let's jump into third question, which is how to make to-do lists so I won't feel overwhelmed by them.
So one of the things that can be incredibly hard and so important is to listen to what your overwhelm is telling you. Why is the overwhelm there? What does it need you to know? Is it telling you that your to-do list is too long, too much, something else, not enough joy, not enough something, not enough core values, like the things that are important, valuable to you? Your answer will become clear. I don't need to tell you any other thing. For me personally, my process, and I'm sharing this because it might potentially help somebody, my specific unique process is I have like a master to-do list, and it's like a huge, big, long thing. This might not help someone that's overwhelmed, right? But my process is to keep this running list of all the things. And then it's sort of like 3 columns. So it's like stuff I want to do, doing, and then done. Those are my 3 columns. And in the stuff that I want to do is my running list. I'm just like always constantly adding to it, things that come to mind, responding to things in the wild. And then when at the beginning of the week, when I'm planning my week, I will go in that list, see what's most exciting, see what sounds fun, see what's a priority, see what will connect me and help me achieve my goals. And then I drag them into the doing. And then when I'm done them, I drag them in the done one. So then I could see all the things that I've done and I can celebrate myself. And so this is the method is technically called Kanban. If you want to search Kanban method, it's Kanban. Obviously, I use my approach to time and productivity with the Kanban method in a holistic, supportive, loving way. And so, focus less on the to-do list, focus more on the have-done list, and drag the things that you currently want to prioritize, focus, do in the middle one. And that is kind of how I make sure that I'm not overwhelmed by all the things that I want to do.
Okay. So, first of all, I will put the name in the description of the podcast down below. And it seems very and thank you for sharing your experience. And I think it's important what you said before. It's important what we are repeating throughout this podcast, which is asking yourself, what do you need and what do you feel like could work for you, and exploring this feeling of being overwhelmed by to-do lists. And I was thinking about me, obviously, and about the fact that I was trying the to-do list that you, kind of a similar one that you are using right now. And also I was trying before the systems that I use right now in my work, in my life. And for me, the game changer was finding out and creating all of the systems, starting with me, and just let them grow in a very natural way. And because we can find online so many great methods and so many great tips and tricks on how to manage your to-do lists and everything. But at the same time, for me, it was all overwhelming because it was not coming from myself and it wasn't mine. And I also treated those solutions as musts. And, if you use this system, like if you decide you want to use this system, you need to follow it every step of the way. And you can't, like those things on this list are there to do them. Not like you have to do them, and you have to check everything off your to-do lists. What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, 100%. When does it ever feel good to be told what to do?
Yeah. But, I think sometimes it creates this, I mean, that's probably why I was so drawn into all of those systems, is because they created this illusion of solving the problem of being overwhelmed and this illusion of the perfect solution. And that's like, if I do this, I will succeed 100% and I will feel great and all my life will be perfect and I will manage to do it all.
Yeah. And that's what we've been ingrained to think, is someone else has the solution. That's one of the biggest things that I really, really get fired up about when it comes to time management, is that we think that someone else does it better, that we're essentially defective, or how we want to do it, our capacity, our rhythms, our flow, like how we need to be is wrong. And it's not at all.
And I think it also comes down to an education system, which is, I mean, it's probably similar in US. I know there are a lot of differences, but maybe the similar fact is that there's only one right answer. And only one person can be right. If you're right, I'm not right.
A, B, C, or D. In my book, it's E. There's no E on the test. That's why I'm a coach, not a time management consultant or productivity consultant or mentor. Like, I literally coach because I want to actually help people feel good about themselves and how they spend their time.
I love that. Okay, so how to approach a task that is urgent but really exhausting at the same time?
I'm curious, what do you have to say about this one?
I've been struggling with these kind of tasks a lot. And I think rethinking if you have to do it at all, and thinking and just exploring if maybe is it a task that you may let go of in the future, maybe not right now, but if it's so exhausting, and is it really something you want to do, and is it aligned with your values and with yourself, and if so, if you let go of it now or in the future, and if not, can you, what is the most supportive, how can you support yourself during the task, and what feels good, and is there any way of doing this task that could feel good to you, that wouldn't make you cringe and wouldn't make you feel like hiding away from the task and quote unquote procrastinating it.
Love that. One of the things that I thought of when I answered this question, brainstorming what I thought about this, you hit the nail on the head in terms of support yourself. How can you take care of yourself? If this task is really, truly urgent, you have to do it, and it's exhausting. What else can you get rid of? What else can you do for yourself? Can you sleep a little bit more when you're having to do this thing? How can you best take care of yourself through doing this task if you really have to do it? And then, of course, what you mentioned is do you really have to do it? Can you give it to somebody else? Does it actually have to get done? And the other thing that I thought of was actually defining. I think a useful exercise around this question is defining what urgent means to you. In my book, I don't want to live in any urgency. I've been really, really working towards removing any urgency from my life. I don't want to rush. I don't want anything to feel like I have to do it. And generally speaking, I've set my life and I've made a bunch of decisions over the past 8-9 years that have gotten me to the point where I'm at today, that I really don't have that much urgency, unless like a flight is delayed and I have to rush to the next one. But yeah, like defining like what urgent means. I know that there's like in traditional time management, there's this thing called the Eisenhower matrix, and that's like the urgency and the importance. And I would say like create your own matrix. That's something that I can do, like work around with my clients, is like, let's create your own version of what's urgent and what's important to you, and putting those things in your life and setting your life up to your own rules, your own matrix, and your own way of processing tasks. Yeah, I think that one of like the first thing that I thought of when I read this question was why.
Yeah. And also about the Eisenhower matrix, I know it. I tried to use it.
Wow.
I feel like it's yeah. Oh no, it's disgusting when I think about it. And I think one of the reasons that it's so repulsive to me right now is that it's focused, like it's designed to be focused on the outside and on the outcome, like the external outcome. That's probably like, when I think about it, I think about numbers and the projects and the goals, and not necessarily my goals and my values and what's important to me. Like in every book I read about this matrix and I saw it, I was fascinated by it, but there was no one word saying that it's for you, and that, you know, it wasn't the place where you put important things wasn't described as what are important things to you, but what are important things in order to achieve this goal or finish this project. And yeah, so it's I don't really.
Let's
like
reclaim it. Maybe, let's reclaim the Eisenhower matrix. I love what you shared.
Yeah. Maybe it will come in time to me, and maybe someday I will start to use it again in my own way, on my own rules.
I do think it's like the concept of filtering, like especially if you struggle with like have to do, shoulds, like I thinking you have to do all the things. I think that it can be an important tool or useful tool to help you filter your tasks. But essentially, like one of the biggest things that I do with the people that I work with is core values. And we've mentioned it a couple of times, but like, yeah, what is most important to you? What makes you feel like you? Your core values as a human being. And I just help people use their values and what's important to them as the filter, essentially. So I think that it's all kind of like connected, but there is a way to bring like maybe a visual element into it or something like that.
Yeah. And I love that. And I loved how we started our work from the values, from my values, which I have never thought about. And yeah, and then it all just like was flowing. I mean, not all the time, of course.
It was all perfect.
But most of the time but it was much easier to make some decisions and to just see, oh my God, obviously I don't want it. I hate it because it's not mine. It's not aligned with my values at all. So yeah, going forward, how to connect keeping deadlines and waiting for inspirations.
Yeah. So hack. I rarely share hacks. A hack, shorten the deadline. But it may not work because that might be like in your brain, right? So like my husband, for example, he's an editor, freelance editor and writer, and he is very motivated externally by deadlines. And so sometimes like if he has a deadline, he's prone to procrastinating. And so like one of the things that he could potentially use is shortening the deadline to make it like a day or two beforehand. So then he feels sort of like that can be healthy, positive, external motivation. But it may not work, right? And so my thing is going deeper. What's really going on? Why do you like what's really happening here? Is there not enough inspiration and joy in your life? And that's what is making you like not meet deadlines or having to push them back or something. I would say like tapping into what inspires you, what gives you energy, and doing more of that to support you in meeting your deadlines. What those things are specifically are unique to you. The other thing is being more realistic with your deadline. So if you tend to like overpromise and you're like, I'll give you this by the end of the week, but you know that you have a ton of other stuff happening, you're in a part of your cycle where you're tired and moody, you're anxious, like all the things happening in your life, like practicing giving more realistic deadlines. And then the last sort of thought there, which again, my husband is a writer, and one of my favorite quotes is, books get written by putting your butt in the chair. And so this can apply to any task, any deadline, any project, is just supportively, lovingly putting yourself in the position to do the thing.
Yeah, that's beautiful what you said, and I agree. And I see something like that in myself when I have a deadline that it's before the deadline, the actual deadline. It kind of lets the pressure, I feel, it's much smaller, because I know if I don't do it that day, nothing will happen. Like there will be nothing wrong to do it the next day. But and this gives me freedom. And usually when I have this freedom, which I really care about because it's one of my core values, the inspiration comes to me, and the process of creation is much easier.
Yeah, I think it's so important to do what we love. It's so important to align our lives around what's most important to us, because when it's sort of like a trust fall, it's a trust exercise. We've been taught that this is not the way to do life. We've been taught to do work and then all the things we have to do, and then we'll have time for ourselves and for our projects and personal, hobbies, desires. And when we do it that way, what time do we have left? That's one of the biggest struggles for people, is that they have no time left over for themselves or the things that they truly care about. And so that's exactly what I do. I literally flip that whole thing on its head. And I say, when you put yourself first, I promise, I will not promise anything other than this in my life, that when you put yourself first, everything else will get done so much easier, so much better, so much faster. And it's just a different way of living. And, it's really beautiful to witness when people do it, because it's so important. It's everything.
And it's really also reassuring for me to hear that, and because I can see it, but I still am sometimes, maybe right now, maybe not that often, but sometimes there are days when I'm hesitating, like maybe not if it's all, if it all makes sense, because I know it does, but I struggle to put myself first, because all of those shoots that I had in my head for last 25 years, 26, 25, okay, are still there. Maybe not that loud, but sometimes they show up, and so it's nice to hear that from you. And I agree because I see it in my life too. But it is scary. It is scary.
It's a huge
sometimes.
trust fall. Again, it just requires so much bravery and courage.
And also, this question reminded me of yesterday. When I was batching content for Instagram, we were talking about it yesterday on our session, that I planned batching content for Instagram, which is, if somebody here doesn't know this term, is like making couple Instagram posts on one sitting. And I prepared myself for this by just having time, blocking time in my calendar for 3 hours to do so, and having a kind of a to-do list that I wanted to look at, maybe not follow step by step, but just look at. To-do list was there to support me. And at one time I was like, oh my God, I have to do 4 Instagram posts, and what if I'm not going to make it in those 3 hours? And then I said to myself, okay, we don't do it anymore. We don't do this anymore. Just be here in the moment and just make one small step and see what comes up, and make yourself most comfortable possible. And I made myself a lemon water. And I did a little breathing exercise, and and then I started to look at to-do lists and seeing what brings me joy, and like following the tasks, not all of them, but most of them, and the tasks that felt supportive to me and that felt good in the moment. And the inspiration came, and it turned out so great, and I'm so happy about all of the posts I did. And so inspiration, I see it as inspiration came from the space that I created for myself, and also from the trust to myself.
Yeah, it's great. It's beautiful. I also want to bring up something that, we can often use self-care as a tool to like force us to do something. And so I want to bring up that nuance. Like, I think that what you did was great. If that feels like the thing that you really truly wanted to do, right? So sometimes you could be like, I'm going to meditate and I'm going to make myself like in the best place ever. So then I can be like my most productive self, like and meet my dad. Like, so I wanted to like bring up that nuance, because it can get complicated there. But I think that it when you do it with love, there won't be that like coercive nature there.
Yeah. I think it's great you said that, because someone could take from what I said. I mean, I know I would do that even a couple months ago, like, oh, she did this, and this. So if I'm going to do it, it's also going to feel great and joyful and effortless. No, I mean, those were the things that I felt in the moment, and that came from within me, and that I did, and that worked for me. And they worked for me probably because I was following myself, and trusting myself, and observing what comes up and what is working for me in the moment.
Love that.
I love that too. I can't believe, and sometimes I really can't believe I'm in this really joyful place that I.
And that was one of our. I don't want to like bring up anything, but I know that was one of the first. I think our first session that we talked about was joy, like just like being able to just allow yourself to feel joy.
Oh, I love this journey. I am so grateful for every step, and for the fact that we met, and that I found you by accident on Spotify.
On the podcast. Now here we are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe someone else is going to find you here. And so we got 3 questions left. And And the first one, how to get rid of the guilt that's coming to me when I'm not doing anything productive or when I only do one task because I don't have an energy to do the rest.
I think there's a couple of things that came to mind for me when I read this question. And I'll share my personal experience with this healing. Sort of like, I think of this as like a time wound, productivity wound. The first thing that I did was to do the things that made me forget that I felt guilty. To me, that was like Netflix, right? Like I could just reading a really good book or hanging out with friends or just like doing something that would allow me to forget about the guilt. So then I could just do it, right? So I could actually take time off instead of continue to work. The second step that I started to take was a concept called a have-done list. They're called a bunch of different things by a bunch of different people. I call them have-done lists. And what I did actually for 2.5, 3 years to help heal this guilt was writing out all the things that I did in a day. So I had the Magic of I, if you're into astrology, I had the Magic of I paper planner. I don't anymore because I travel and I need to keep things light, but I had a paper planner and I didn't use it to write down my to-do list. I actually kept it and wrote down what I did that day. And it could range from just like waking up, taking a shower, eating breakfast. It could range from watching Netflix. It could range from being super productive, accomplishing goals, making money, literally anything. It's anything that you have done, and you can expand it to anything that you felt, anything that you, like it's essentially like a journal, right? But I really used it to help me heal my guilt. And I called them have done lists because I was like, here's like proof to my brain that I have done enough. I have done a lot of things because our brains like to trick us and tell us that we haven't done enough. So that was the second part in my journey. And then the third part was tapping into my anger. Like I was so angry at like the world essentially, or like the system that made me feel bad about not working. Like I had to tap into that anger, that like frustration that I was powerless over essentially, that it was like taking away my life, my precious time in my life. It was making me not hang out with people. It was not like losing precious time with friends. It was making me not hug my husband. Like I was like, you know, I'm too busy. I need to get things done. And I wouldn't stop. And it was really ruining my life. And so I had to get angry, and I still get angry because it's now impacting the people that I support and love. And so anger is really important. Like however you feel, if you feel guilty, like tap into like something that is going to heal that guilt. And so those are the three things that come to mind that have helped me heal my guilt around toxic productivity and like resting and slowing down. I think what we just mentioned before is actually internalizing and reminding yourself over and over again that when you put yourself first, it will be so much easier to do anything that you want to do. Do it all. You can get it all done if you put yourself first. And then the last thing is work with me. Like literally hire me, because you and I can work together on healing it. Like that's one of my favorite things to help people with, is reclaiming their worth from putting it in their to-do list and their achievements, their success, and feeling like a whole human worthy being of love, of joy, of peace, of rest. It's just like everything, my passion.
Yeah, and obviously I highly recommend working with you. It's like the outcome is beyond my expectations in my dreams even.
No, you go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
No, I mean, I just like, there are no words to describe what working with you bring to my life and how it helped me and how yeah, and again, how safe I feel around you and this beautiful space you create where I feel like I'm healing just by being in there. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you again.
You make my heart happy. Yeah. And the last thing that I'll say about this is like your awareness around feeling that guilt and your desire to like not work all the time are huge hurdles. And so now it's just choosing what to do differently and practicing that over and over again.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for answering that. And the next question is kind of funny, and I couldn't connect it to any other one, which is, how can I stop wasting my time on scrolling my phone?
Yeah. So with a loving perspective, I want to challenge the person that asked this question and anyone that feels like they waste time. I personally don't believe that time is wasted. I think even if you spend it on things that aren't a priority, I think that there's still something valuable and a lesson to learn there. And so I don't think that time is wasted. That's like a firm philosophical belief that I have around time. And so I want to first challenge and stretch this person around wasting time and ask, like, what are you receiving when you do the thing? Because clearly you're doing it for a reason, right? We do everything for a reason. And so allowing yourself to explore and get curious about what the reason is will then allow you to discover solutions that aren't just hacks. Like you can do all the hacks and still like you need to rest. You need your brain to take a break. You need to connect with other people, like whatever the reason is that you're on social media, that is more important than like any hack that I could ever give anyone. However, I do want to share tangible tips because this is something that is really near and dear to my heart. So we got like sort of the mindset piece, and then the second piece is social media, internet, whatever, is created to capture and steal our attention. Like it is designed by very, very smart people who like have intentionally built it for us to feel powerless over it. And so when you have that in mind, it's like, oh, you don't have to feel so bad about not being able to control the thing or have enough self-discipline or, you know, whatever you might be telling yourself. And so once I kind of came to terms with that fact, I was like, oh, like, let me use technology against the thing that is literally stealing my precious moments. And I set up time limits, and so they're pretty strict. I deleted Facebook and LinkedIn off my phone. So the only thing I have on my phone is is Instagram. And I give myself 45 minutes a day. That's it, total. And I have my email on my phone, but I only have that for 5 minutes a day. So I have pretty strict time limits. And if you're hearing this, you're like, oh, but I ignore them. Like I set them up, but I ignored them. What I've done, because I found myself doing that as well, my partner, my husband, and I actually set up passwords that he knows the password to mine and I know the password to his.
Okay, so you just kind of block yourself from entering physically.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
And,
okay.
Yeah. So like when I'm like, oh my God, like I'm almost done like making a post or talking to someone or whatever, like I literally have to go to my husband and be like, can you put the password in? Asking for permission. I sometimes feel like a child when it comes to it, but then I have to remind myself that social media was created to literally like steal my life. So yeah, those are some tangible like tips that I've used in my life. But essentially at the end of the day, like the real solution to me comes back to when I mentioned initially, like what are you doing and like or why you're doing this, and is it because you're avoiding being with yourself? Is it because you need rest or you need something? Like, and how can you meet that need that's not the thing that you want to do?
Yeah, that's really inspirational for me even. Yeah, and the question, why do you need that? I think it's very powerful. And also what you said at the beginning, that there, like, and what you emphasize a lot during our work, it's like there's time, like there's no time, like it's all time. There's no time for like work time, like dividing, for me at least, dividing, this is work time, this is fun time, this is, I don't know, education time. It's not helpful for me. And also maybe dividing the time, like this is valuable time and this is not, this is productive time and this is not, like it's just time, and it's not good or bad, and it is what it is, right?
Yeah, I think when we think about, setting aside certain amount of time for work, for family, for anything else, like hobbies, like we think that it needs to look a certain way, which is why I kind of like have that guiding principle that in my holistic time management like principles. But it gives us another reason to be wrong. Like when we have this idea of how much time we need to spend in each area, it gives us another tool to make ourselves wrong and feel guilty or shameful or bad. And yeah, it's just not helpful. And when we think about like work-life balance, it's often like, okay, I'll work for 8 hours a day, like the traditional 8-hour work day, and then couple of hours
rest,
sleep, and then a couple of hours like with family or whatever. And
I remember, sorry, but I remember doing exactly something like that, like dividing my day. Okay, so I should work this amount of hours and study this amount of hours, and then maybe once a week, like go out with my boyfriend for 3 or 4 hours and do something like every week. Okay, and if I do it all in the right way, I'll be good and perfect, and I will feel great.
Yeah. And did that feeling of greatness ever come?
Surprise, no. No, it didn't.
And it can, sometimes it can, right? And one of my clients that I worked with, he had like 9 things, he loves lists. His brain loves lists. I love it. And he had 9 things that would make a day feel really good. And 3 of them were like professional, 3 of them were personal, and then 3 of them were like family, loved ones, all that stuff. And it's, when you make a list that's holistic, like that could be useful for somebody that helps them feel like they had a really good day. But oftentimes, like when we even hit all of them, it's like, okay, now I need to like raise the bar even more. And that isn't helpful, because we need to actually have metrics that will help us feel enough and like good.
Yeah. And it can bring us to the very, very anxious place.
Never enough place, scarcity place.
Shameful place. Okay, so the last question is where to start, and I think it's a great question to finish our podcast with.
Because I'm a coach, I'm sure that you know that I'm going to do this.
Yeah, and I think I started to do this like in my last product about PMS. I also finished this little webinar with this, what you're gonna probably do.
Where do you think you need to start?
Exactly.
Where's your biggest struggle when it comes to how you're spending your time? Is it overwhelm? Is it exhaustion? Is it overcommitting? Is it guilt? Is it anything else that I haven't mentioned? Like, what do you think is like your biggest thing that you struggle with when it comes to your time. And from there, that will tell you where to start, which I know might sound silly, but like it really is unique to you. And that is like essentially the most important thing. Like we've kind of already mentioned in my work, one of the most important things is to start with the whole human, beautiful, amazing person. And we'll look at things like core values, or we'll look at all of the things in your life that impact your external, circumstances and your capacity, and like all the things on your plate, or anything else that makes you who you are, your identity, even your privileges, like all the things that make you a human being. I think core values are like one of my favorite ways because it's so like uplifting and like positive. But I think sometimes, like especially if you have mental illness, or if you're a parent, if you have chronic illness or any other physical disability or anything like that, it's really important to often take those pieces of you into how you spend your time. But at the end of the day, like you're a soul, you're a body, you're a human being. And core values, like what's really truly important to you, is one of the places that we start. And from there, then we make all the decisions based on who you are, on what to do with your time, and how to best spend it and feel really, really, really good.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being here with me and answering all of those questions. And again, I'm so grateful that we have met. And also, if you could share now a little bit about how you can help, like your resources, your products, and how can people use them?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to this. If you're here and you're
that's something. 2 hours.
Well, maybe we could like turn it into 2 parts. Part 1, part 2.
Maybe. Yeah. We'll see.
But yeah, so my free resource that you can download from my website, something that we touched on quite a few times, was connecting with yourself. And when you're tired, when you're busy, when you're overwhelmed or stressed out, like you have a ton of stuff going on, it's almost impossible to actually pause and connect with yourself. And so I have a like guided meditation practice that you can use every day if you want to use it every day, or at any increment that you feel is most supportive, and it will help you tune into yourself. And that is the most important skill when it comes to your time, when it comes to your life, when it comes to just being a good human being on this planet, is operating from a place of wholeness and of like true you, true authentic you. And so that is hopefully will be on my website in the next few days. It's like brand new, it's coming out. And
I mean, by the time this podcast goes out,
it will be there.
There already.
This is my deadline. This is what I'm using you right now as my external motivator, my strategy.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so that is there for you as a resource to help you really start operating in the way that you want to be. And aside from that, I have a lot of great resources on my site on like the actual time management tools that I use and business tools that I use. I have a wonderful blog that will be really supportive, and I'm on Instagram, so you can always send me a message and connect with me. I love talking with folks and seeing if I can support them in living the sustainable, authentic way that they are committed to living. And I do that, like I mentioned before, one-on-one coaching, my VIP days. And then if you're a coach or service provider, I'd love to certify you in holistic time management so you can help yourself and help your people.
Great. And from me, I just wanted to add about the language barrier that some people might have, and about how supportive you are and how comfortable you made me feel from the beginning in terms of speaking English with you. And because I was scared at the beginning, and I wasn't sure how am I going, how are we going to get along, and you also just you being so supportive really helped me.
You have like amazing English. Like I don't know what but yes, I totally get it. And like I shared, my aunt is Polish and she lived in Poland for the first 40 years of her life. So I think she has a stronger Polish accent than you do, and so I'm used to it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, but there's still the voice in my head saying that, oh my God, your accent, like you should have said it differently. You don't know this word or the other one. And yeah, the grammar. Oh.
I live in Europe, so I talk to Europeans with Portuguese accents, like with every accent all the time. So yeah, the language barrier is not important. You as an amazing human being, lovely person that you are, is what's important to me. And I say to every single person, I accept and welcome you just as you are right now.
And I can feel that through working with you. Thank you very much, Becca, again, and who knows, maybe we'll meet here again. Oh, and also I wanted to ask you about some books recommendations, but maybe you can send some books recommendations to me about holistic time approach.
Yeah.
And I can put the
links.
Yeah,
I can send you the links, and also the 2 books that I can mention right here is Laziness Does Not Exist. And Time Management for Mortals, 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burke. I think The Laziness Doesn't Exist is by Devin Pierce, I think is their last name. But I'll send you the 2 links. But those books are amazing when it comes to time management and work-life balance and all the stuff.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you again for being here with me, and have a great day.
Bye.
Bye. Mam nadzieję, że ten odcinek Ci się podobał i wszystkie linki, o których mówiłyśmy, wszystkie książki, wszystkie odnośniki do Becki, do jej profilów, social mediów i rzeczy, którymi ona się zajmuje, są w opisie. No i bardzo, bardzo Cię zachęcam do podzielenia się, czy to ze mną, czy z nią, czy w wiadomości prywatnej, czy w komentarzu gdzieś, do swoich przemyśleń na ten temat i do tego, co z Tobą zarezonowało w tym odcinku i co do Ciebie przyszło. Także dziękuję Ci bardzo za przesłuchanie i jak zwykle trzymam za Ciebie ogromnie kciuki. Pamiętaj, że gdziekolwiek jesteś, cokolwiek robisz, to na jakimkolwiek jesteś etapie, to nie jesteś w tym sama. I życzę Ci